Recently, my daughter was working on an application, and as I was preparing to leave the house, she asked for my help. I only had a few minutes. I hadn't allowed extra time to check in with her and see if she needed help on this application. And unfortunately, I went into problem solving mode, knowing that I did not have time to help her right then. She ended up frustrated. I was frustrated. I told her I can help you later, but I can't do it right now. We ended up working it out, and she ended up not needing my help. She just needed a sounding board, and she figured it out on her own. But had I paused and just stopped and said, what do I have time for? What does she need? Thought through it, I could have had a much better interaction with her. In this episode, we're going to talk about the power of a pause and how you can leverage these even on the most frantic of days. Hey, I'm Crystal Wagner. I'm a life and parenting coach, and as a late diagnosed autistic ADHD mom, I know what it's like to get into that cognitive overload, emotional dysregulation where you want to help your child and they're dysregulated, you're dysregulated, and it just spins out of control. I want to help moms to regain that control so that they can be a safe space for their children that they want to come back to when they need help. If you or your child, or both, are neurodivergent, you probably need some more time to process a situation and process what's going on. But too often, we as moms jump right in. We don't give them that time to process. We just want to solve the problem and move on. But often they don't need answers, or if they do need some help, they're only stuck on a little bit, and we can give them a little nudge and then they can continue on their own. But since we jump right in, we don't allow time for that pause. We don't allow time for ourselves or our children to process their emotions, to think through situations, and to formulate a response. Sometimes we might need to allow time to process the emotions. In episode 5, I gave you some tips on how you can stay calm even when your teens' emotions explode. So I'll leave that in the show notes so that you can listen to that if you haven't already. And sometimes we just need to allow our teens time to struggle through a situation. They may need to wrestle with it a little bit. If we are always solving their problems for them, we don't give them the opportunity to see what might work, to try different things and see where that's failing, where they need to have a different perspective. They will have to do that as adults. And so if we can give them that opportunity now, they'll be better prepared and they'll recognize, you know what? Sometimes life is hard and I have to struggle a little bit, and that's okay. The key in both of these situations is to be intentional with your response. And to do that, you need to give yourself a moment to think through what is actually needed right now. Do they need help immediately, or can they struggle with this a bit before I jump in? Do they need to process some emotions before their prefrontal cortex or their thinking brain comes back online so that they can actually think through that? But in reality, this is harder than it seems. There's a number of things that play into that. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, we get busy. They ask at inopportune times. That happens a lot for me. We might want to jump in and solve the problem, or we forget that they've acquired new skills. Sometimes I help my daughters in ways that I've helped them in the past, and they say, Mom, I got this. Oh, right. Yeah, you have developed those skills. You have had some practice in that. That's not where your sticking point is anymore. So we need to step back and evaluate what is actually needed. How can you pause more often? It takes practice to embrace this new mindset of pausing before you respond. One way you can do that is to become comfortable sitting with yourself in silence. I have a resource that's called Pause and Listen that walks you through some guided breathing exercises and meditations to help you slow down, reconnect with yourself and with God, and become comfortable sitting in the silence with yourself. I'll leave a link in the show notes so that you can check that out if that would be helpful for you. But we have to embrace this discomfort. Silence is uncomfortable. In my coach training, we learned that most people are uncomfortable after 2 to 4 seconds of silence. And after about 6 to 7 seconds, somebody will say something to fill the silence. Have you been in a group situation where a leader asks a question and it's silent, nobody's answering, and everybody's starting to look around and feeling uncomfortable, and somebody volunteers something? It's bound to happen because we don't like sitting in that space. But I've had coaching calls where we've had a full minute of silence as a client thought through her answer to what I'd asked. And initially, I would have been uncomfortable with that. But I've learned that in that silence and in that space is where they do some of their deepest thinking. And the answers that they had after that moment of silence to think were very profound and important to what they were trying to accomplish that day. So try to lengthen the amount of time that you wait for an answer before you jump in. Count to 10 before you say anything and see what comes up for your child. They may be able to solve the problem. They may have some ideas, or they may be ready for you to jump in at that point because they've realized, I actually don't know the answer. The more that you practice pausing, the easier it will get. Try this in conversations with your teen, your spouse, your friends, your coworkers, wherever you are. Try just giving more space in the conversation and not jumping in quite so soon. But also give yourself grace. This is a hard skill to develop and it will take practice. And you might need to ask for forgiveness at times because sometimes you'll jump in too soon. There are still times, even though I have been working on this skill for multiple years now, that I will jump in too soon and my daughters will say, Mom, like, oh, sorry. And then I'm quiet and I let them finish their thought. So I hope you're taking away from this that neurodivergent individuals need some extra time to process, and that it can be challenging to embrace silence and to practice pausing because that's not comfortable for us. But the more that you lean into that discomfort, the more that you practice embracing silence, embracing pausing, and in multiple situations, the easier it will get. If you're listening to this in real time, I'd like to invite you to a special Brick by Brick session on December 29th. The Brick by Brick sessions are my facilitated Lego series play sessions where we use Legos to help us see and experience the situation a little more vividly, a little more concretely. Things are not so abstract. In this special session, we'll be exploring finding your calm in the storm. When your teen's emotions are rising, when the situation is creating discomfort in you, we will be talking about how you can find your calm and use that, leverage that as you go through interactions. I'll leave details in the show notes so you can learn more about that. Space is limited and you need to register by December 17th so that I can get your Lego kit mailed out to you. But I would love for you to join us. It is a very powerful way for you to see your thoughts, to see what is really possible as you find your calm in these situations. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. I will see you next time.